Okay, so just to carry on from where we left off regarding the Berlin blockade, before I carry on the Berlin blockade, maybe just let's go through again what we have done so far. So it is chronologically from the end of World War II, the first actions that was being taken was Stalin, okay, and his creation, not creation, his setting out the satellite states as a buffer to protect himself and to form a security for the Soviet Union. Then after that, because of that, the Western powers or United States, they regarded their action as actually aggressive rather than defensive because there was no communication. And then they followed that up with the policy of containment in the Truman Doctrine as well as the Marshall Plan. Then so after that, Soviet Union responded with the Comecon and the Cominform. And then from there on, we actually moved on to the Berlin blockade. Okay, so you can see it's like tit for tat. Okay, after Soviet Union do one thing, United States responds. After United States respond by they're doing one thing, then Soviet Union respond. Okay, so it went on until the Berlin blockade, and for this particular incident, the highlight of this is the sheer childishness of it all. That Soviet Union Stalin mainly thinks that he can actually starve out the entire West Berlin by blocking out everything else, and then hopefully that they would say, "Oh, look, communism is so welcoming, because we are so hungry and starving and nobody is helping us." You see the idiocy of the actions actually taken by Stalin in this Berlin blockade. It's really, really very stupid and childish. And so it failed, okay, mainly because they actually did manage to successfully airlift so many supplies into West Berlin, and that was really quite a slap in the face lah for Stalin. Okay, it not only just the blockade itself, not okay when it failed, right? It was the point when it fails is actually when Stalin has no choice but to reopen the land and sea routes to Western Berlin. So that is the indication that it failed. Okay, and you must also know, right, for the Berlin airlift itself, it was a very tedious operation. And the fact that the Western powers actually managed to successfully pull it off, it is quite impressive because you're feeding an entire city of Berlin, okay, or rather West Berlin, and actually that's quite a feat because the amount of food, the amount of supplies that's required to go in to ensure that they continue on surviving, right, it is a lot, and it's not something that can be so easily done. So the failure of the blockade humiliated the Soviet Union, boosted the credibility of the Western powers, okay, and the three zones in West Germany, they became one to form West Germany, and for the Soviet zones, it became the East Germany. Okay, the official names is this lah, but we will just call them West Germany and East Germany for simplicity's sake. Okay. Okay, so let me give you some statistics regarding the Berlin airlift. So if you add these numbers together, it's about 5,000 tons of supplies required to sustain the people of about 2 million people. All right, and each plane can carry about 3.5 tons of cargo. 1 ton, for you to know, is about 900 kilograms. So you can imagine the number of planes required, the number of flights required just to fly into Berlin every day. Okay, that is a huge amount of resources actually required. So on this part, right, you can see the significance of the Berlin blockade, how much the Western powers actually did, what are the actions they actually did to actually ensure that the West Berlin people survived, and they actually is wow, okay, the amount of effort that they actually did put into this. So after the Berlin blockade, the USA, they actually feared that Soviet Union might potentially get aggressive. So therefore, you see, like I mentioned before, it's one reaction to the next one. It's like I slap you, you slap me, then after that I slap you harder, then you slap me harder, and just goes on back and forth, back and forth. So the USA, in response to the Berlin blockade, they created this thing called NATO. Now, NATO stands for, I did not write it down here, crap, okay. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, okay? Or in other words, more commonly known as no action talk only. But mainly because up till even today, NATO has never ever actually been used. Now, what is NATO? NATO is actually an organization created by the USA that as long as you're part of NATO, you would be dependent on each other for security and military assistance. Okay, so this particular organization is for the purpose of helping to defend Western Europe, because Western Europe needed the USA's military strength to defend them and to protect them, and therefore this purpose of the purpose of NATO would be to defend them. Okay, so basically, okay, to explain it even easy, to be understood even more easily, right? It's basically that any organization within NATO, let's say Britain as part of NATO, if they are being attacked, all the other countries in NATO would come to Britain's assistance. All, okay, not just USA, but all the Western European countries, basically NATO, would actually come to Britain's assistance if they were to be attacked. Okay, so that's the last point here. They will come to each other's defense if they were attacked by any external party. In response to NATO, you see again, okay, tit for tat, Soviet Union formed this thing called the Warsaw Pact, and this is an alliance with the Eastern European states. And similar to NATO, under the Warsaw Pact, they would also come to each other's defense if they were attacked by any external party. So you see, the entire Cold War is really just a just a one party do one thing, the other party reacts to another thing. At no point in time, again, I would highlight that there is no communication. Okay, so that's how the Cold War actually is about. If up till now you're still confused about what's going on, it's really just about two parties, two sides not communicating with each other, trying to outdo each other, trying to prove that they are the better system, they are the one with more influence, okay, in this entire scheme of things. And yeah, in effect, you can think of it as something that's really childish, right? I mean, if you look at your parents, if they're quarreling and they're not talking to each other, you would feel that they are a bit childish as well. So that is the significance of the Cold War that is as it is. Okay, of course there are many events that actually happens in the Cold War, and we are only studying various case studies. But hopefully, whatever you are looking at from here, the beginnings of the Cold War, you understand what is actually going on. Okay, now a little bit more about Warsaw Pact. After the collapse of communism, which brings about the end of the Cold War in 1991, most of the members of the Warsaw Pact actually joins NATO. So NATO is still in existence today, but it's mainly serving, the Western European countries, European countries rather, okay, and the United States. One significant thing to note, okay, last year there was this event that took place, okay, the year being 2014, the Ukraine crisis. Please go find out more about it. It can be a potential SSSBQ topic for this year, because since it happened last year, many schools actually set on that particular topic for their prelim papers. You can ask your SS teacher to let you have more info regarding that. But okay, regarding the Ukraine crisis, right? Since Ukraine was formerly part of the Soviet Union, after the collapse of communism, Ukraine becomes a country by itself. Ukraine actually didn't join NATO. Whereas, right, most of the satellite states such as Romania, Poland, Czechoslovakia, they all joined NATO after the collapse of communism. So that was one rather significant thing that happened in recent times that we can relate to the Cold War history that we are studying about. Okay, and this is a map of NATO versus the Warsaw Pact countries. The rest of the colors are just for demonstration purposes. I have actually no idea what is it for. Okay. And all right, an extension of this that we are going to be looking at, we're going to be looking at the Korean War and the Cuban Missile Crisis. We'll see how actually the Cold War impacts everywhere else as well. It's not just Korean War, there's also the Vietnam War that also forms part of the Cold War. There's the Cuban Missile Crisis, which concerns Cuba, which is situated somewhere there, okay, below of United States. United States is this thing up here. All right, and it was originally centered on Europe, but it starts to extend out and it starts to break out, and we shall see the significance of the Cold War in that it impacts the rest of the world as well. And before I end, I will just bring to your attention on page 25 of your textbook, there are some of the examples that we will be looking at, the two case studies of Korean War and Cuban Missile Crisis. Also, the construction of the Berlin Wall. Okay, look at the bottom right of your textbook, right? There was this wall that was actually constructed to separate out East and West Berlin. That was actually quite a sad thing because a lot of people were escaping from East Berlin over to West Berlin, and Stalin says, okay, no more escaping. So he decides to build this wall and to house and to put everybody in East Berlin where they are, so that they will not escape over to West Berlin. Okay, hang on, I got a picture of that. Let me just find it. Okay, so this picture here is a residence of West Berlin showing children to their grandparents who live on the eastern side. So to think of it this way, when they divided Berlin, right, it is actually a city that was being divided. It's like, imagine if your parents live in Tampines and you live in Choa Chu Kang, and then they decide to divide Singapore into two, then you won't ever get to see them again because of the division. All right, and so this is a residence. They are showing the pictures of the children over to the grandparents who live on the other side. You can see that they're standing on the tools and trying to show them over the wall. Okay, this is the wall. So it's really, really quite incredible. Alright, so that is the end of the lectures on the Cold War. Hopefully through this you understand a little bit better of what is the Cold War all about, and ask your questions in class and we'll deal with some challenging SEQs. And if you don't understand, you better clarify first before we get to the SEQs. Otherwise, it will be very, very tough on you. Alright, thank you.